Hey, welcome back to Wrench Wench Worx. I'm Jenny, and I am super stoked that you're joining me again today. Now, I do apologize. I know it's been a little while since I've been able to put out a video. That's because the bulk of what Wrench Wench Worx does is customized CNC training and workshops for career and technical education. And to be honest, I've been on the road more than I've been home recently, so I just haven't had a chance to work in my workshop and make content. So now I have a really good excuse to make content because this next project was inspired by my backyard. If you live in the country, chances are pretty good you may know what this is. Or you have at least seen these pipes that are kind of poking out all over in your backyard. If you don't live in the country and you don't know what this is, no worries, because I'm just going to give you a 2-second explanation as to what this is and what it has to do with my project. This is a septic well vent. And so you're probably wondering, what's a septic well vent? Well, a lot of the times when folks live out in the country, we have our own well and septic, which means that we get our fresh water from a well that's on our property, and our wastewater actually gets flushed out into a septic that also is on our property. The purpose of the pipe is actually to give access to both the well and the septic, because you do sometimes have to get things pumped out. Or if you have a clog, they make easy entry for your plumber or utility servicemen. This particular one has a cap on it. It's a loose cap, and the reason the cap on this is loose is because it is actually a pipe that is designed to vent. So anytime you have a septic, you get gas that builds up in there, and so you need a way to vent it into the atmosphere. Now, you're probably thinking, well, shucks, Jen, thank you for that brief little tutorial on backyard plumbing. Now, that is not the purpose of this video, but I just wanted to give you a descriptor so you understand what I'm trying to make next. You'll notice behind me that there's this windmill that's a little worse for the wear. It's about 20 years old. It's been out in the elements, and honestly, the lumber is just breaking down to the point where it's not advantageous to fix anymore. Now, you're probably thinking, well, is that a lawn ornament? It is in fact a cover that we put over the top of this pipe. And the reason you see a lot of these decorative well and septic covers are kind of twofold. So putting a loose cover over the top of this still allows that gas to vent out into the atmosphere, but at the same time, it prevents additional contaminants, grass clippings, the whole 9 yards. If this loose top gets knocked off, you don't want to get a whole lot of stuff, especially in your well, because that's your drinking water. Now, this one goes to septic. We have other pipes that I'm probably going to work on some covers for, but essentially, I'm going to be making a new cover that kind of fits our family, our aesthetic, and also goes over the top of this septic vent pipe, so that it A, looks nice, and B, it also prevents us from accidentally hitting the pipe with the lawn tractor, because a lot of the times when you're out here and you're mowing, you can get awfully close to it, and the last thing you want to do is take out a piece of your lawn plumbing. So without further ado, let's see what I'm making out in my shop. Now, when I started with the planning phase of what I wanted for a septic vent cover, I really didn't have a ton of requirements. It just really needs to be large enough to clear the pipe, and the pipe that I wanted to cover is 18 inches tall with a 4-inch in diameter pipe and a 5-inch in diameter vent top. And so I started thinking, okay, I need something that has an access hole that's probably about 6 inches just to give us some clearance. I want it to stand maybe about 2 feet tall. It doesn't need to be massive, but it needs to be something that was heavy enough so it didn't blow away. It also needs to be easy to maintain, fairly weather resistant, and fairly easy for a service technician to just lift up and remove in case we do need access to the septic system. To be fair, I could have easily gotten away with, to be honest, just a large box that was big enough to clear the top of the pipe, and with a clearance hole that was big enough to fit nicely and easily over this 5-inch diameter vent cap. However, that sounded really, really boring. And Aesthetic wise, I don't really know how appealing it would be to be looking out in my backyard at a big giant box. Instead, I really wanted something that kind of embraced the quirkiness and fun of my family unit. And then it dawned on me, as the wife and wench of a dungeon master, I started thinking, how nifty would it be if I could build an icosahedron over the top of this pipe? And for anyone who doesn't know what an icosahedron is, it's okay, because I'm going to tell you. It's the same shape as a D20 or a 20-sided dice. As a one-woman shop, my bandwidth is, of course, a bit limited. On many projects, it really makes no sense for me to reinvent the wheel, or in this case, the icosahedron. Now, I could have spent a few hours drafting up a sketch and solid model for my cover, but as time is not a luxury that I have most days, I tend to utilize and support the maker and artist community of Etsy. More often than not, I can find highly affordable templates and DXF files while also supporting another small business owner in the process. Now, in this case, Chaos Emporium had exactly what I was looking for, which was a DXF download to their version of a much smaller D20. And for the low, low price of $10 for a DXF download, I wouldn't have to spend any wasted time developing my own connector and face geometries. And before anyone asks, no, I cannot share these files with you, but you can certainly purchase them from Chaos Emporium. They're very clean files and exactly what I was looking for to get started on this project. At the end of this video, I'm going to add a link to their Etsy page in my video description for anyone who is interested in scoping out their epic files. I wanted to cut my cover out of some old plywood that was just sitting in the rafters collecting dust. So I went ahead and pulled in the 3 DXF components that I needed into Fusion 360. I scaled them, and then I tried to figure out how to lay them or nest them on top of a 2-foot by 4-foot piece of plywood and still be able to get everything that I needed after cutting 4 pieces of ply. The triangular faces, we needed 20 apiece. The hub here for the connector, we needed 12, and then we needed at minimum 60 of these small connectors. So I just copied this geometry over once it was scaled to my liking, and then I positioned them on each sheet according to how I could make the best use of the plywood that I had, and also allowed myself some area to put in hold down screws. The plywood was a bit chipped up in some places, I determined it would be best to have a few extra cutouts in case a few of those components turned out to be a little too chipped up to be useful. And I am glad that I did. So I did go ahead and run 4 full sheets on here, cutting out all the components with a single tool, utilizing a simple 2D contour path with tabs. In this shot, you'll see I'm going to go ahead and remove that material skeleton or that previously cut sheet, and then go ahead and give my router bed a good brush off and a good vacuuming. It's important to have a good clean surface for that next sheet to adhere to. And now you'll probably see that I do not currently have a vacuum system, which really doesn't slow me down a whole lot. I tend to just layer my material with some indoor-outdoor carpet tape by Duck. I love this stuff. I don't have problems with things shifting, and it really does hold down pretty securely. This particular board you'll probably see has a pretty decent healthy bow to it, which really isn't a problem. For what we're making here, it's nothing critical. I just want to make sure that sheet is held down well, and it's nothing I can't handle with a couple strategically placed wood screws. We're going to find the center of the sheet here, which coincidentally matches the center of my part program, touch off my tool, and let her buck. Here you'll probably notice that I don't have my dust collection system on right now. I do have one in the shop, but for visibility purposes, I tend to leave it off during videos. However, I do still tend to keep my lungs and my eyes safe by putting on my goggles and my N95 mask because this is rather nasty dust. doing some manual sanding here. The material is relatively chippy, so I'm just hitting it by hand to break the edges so I have a good surface to adhere to. Little bit of paint. This is just the primary coat just to get everything started. And then it's arts and crafts time here at Wrench Wench Worx. Using my favorite wood glue, the Gorilla Wood Glue, I am busy putting together 60 of those connectors into those 12 hubs. And these will serve as the inner scaffolding and supports for the D20. You may have noticed when I was nesting these dice that I did not include the numbers on the faces. That is because I decided that I would like to do these individually at the end once I determined which faces were usable and which ones were a bit too chipped out. I then added a text character using the design feature. I extruded it into the model and then just created a simple pocket program using that same tool so that I could add a white epoxy inlay to each face as soon as they got done cutting. My trusty carpet tape and some scrap wood. I secure each of the triangular pieces to the bed with the face that's going to be the exterior face facing outward. Here you can see I'm using an old, somewhat dull upcut router bit. And so I'm going to get a little bit more of a nasty frayed top, but the bottom of that pocket's going to be nice and clean. And that is because I plan on throwing some epoxy in there, and I just want a good surface for that epoxy to adhere to. Go ahead, sand her off. I know I'm going to have to repaint it, which is not a big deal. I'll do that after I get the epoxy poured and once it's cured. So a little bit of powder, a little bit of the liquid epoxy tint as well will give us nice white numbers that are really going to pop, especially because it's going to be sitting out in the middle of the yard. So I do want that stark difference. And you can see here, just pouring her in, let her cure. This stuff cures in about 24 hours, so I should be ready to go in the morning. Once the epoxy was cured and the faces sanded, I made one final cut to the back of each section so that I could make these D20 numbers translucent. I achieved this by flipping over the part, inlay side down, and just milling out a pocket in the back of the triangular section, just deep enough to cut through the bottom of the epoxy layer, which in this case was just over a 1/4 inch. Once my epoxy cured, I sanded the face and used my trusty indoor-outdoor carpet tape to secure it to the router. Here's that pocket that we just programmed in the previous step, and the whole purpose of this pocket's just to make that face translucent. A little bit of touch-up paint. I knew that that first coat of paint was going to eventually be sanded away, but it did give us a good foundation. It also helped me keep track of which side was up and which side was down. The assembly process, hands down, was probably one of my favorite parts of this whole project. It was a lot more fun and also a lot more challenging than I anticipated. And I think it's due to the fact that, honestly, the original die is probably about 1/10 of the size of this particular one. But I have to give major props to Chaos Emporium where I got this file because all those connectors and faces fit incredibly well. And it was pretty easy to get together outside of just the sheer size of this D20. You can see here there is expandable foam that I put in those cracks because I do want to keep contaminants away from that septic vent. And I thought, man, I wanted to go for a real organic shape here. So I went to Ace Hardware, picked up some low pressure window insulator foam and sealed up all those cracks, let it sit overnight, and she sanded down like a dream and really gave that D20 the surface finish that I was looking for. Of course, you want to wear your PPE because you don't want to be inhaling any of this stuff. Last couple touch-ups on the paint, and you can see here I actually really enjoy the hand painting process, and at the very end I was absolutely ecstatic with the results. As kind of a fun final last touch before I secure my D20 over the top of that septic vent, I decided to jump on Amazon and purchase some inexpensive solar powered fairy lights. If you recall when I was putting this together, I did make all the panels translucent so you can see that they are see-through, and that was intentional. We spend a fair amount of time here in our backyard in the summer, especially in the evenings, doing bonfires, barbecuing, and just kind of enjoying the fresh air. And I was thinking, man, if I'm going to go to this trouble of putting together a big giant D20, I sure as heck want to appreciate it while I'm out in the backyard. And so I'm going to make this bad boy illuminate when the sun goes down. I am super stoked with how well this vent cover both fit and honestly how it looks in the middle of our yard. It's low profile, but it's loud enough to scream, please don't hit me with the lawnmower. And the sun is going to be going down shortly here, so then we can kind of scope it out and see how well I wove those fairy lights into the internal connectors of the D20. I am out in the backyard with my shop managers, Diesel and Clutch, and we were delighted to see that our D20 is in fact illuminated, which was pretty impressive considering I didn't get much time to charge the solar panels while I was putting them inside the die. But I'm pretty stoked. It looks incredible, as our backyard does tend to get pretty dark. It's kind of fun to see some illumination back here, and hoping to make some more odds and ends for our yard in the next coming months. So stay tuned and let's wrap up and head back to the shop. I just want to thank you all for popping by the shop and keeping me a bit of company. I'm hoping to have a couple more videos out in the next few weeks here before I'm back on the road again for a little bit in May. First video is already well underway. It's going to be a preventative maintenance and troubleshooting video on simple mechanical adjustments that you can make to your CNC machine to reduce linear chatter. The second video is going to be another project-based. I've been getting a lot of requests for project-based videos, and so I'm going to try to do a step-by-step granular look at how to do some basic CAD CAM work and use inexpensive materials and repurposed materials in order to make some pretty kick-ass stuff. Kind of like this cocked rooster table right next to me, which I made with just an old conference table and some pallet wood and a little bit of epoxy and just some standard stuff that I had laying around the house. So if you do have any ideas, recommendations, things you'd like to see, things you'd like to see less of, feel free to drop it in the comments or feel free to drop me an email. I will leave that information in the detail section of this video. Otherwise, thanks again for joining me, and we really look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks. Bye.